Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, and we're going to talk about product placement. All right, so I've done quite a few videos on Dungeons & Dragons and product placement, and generally the flow for that was, should there be product placement in Dungeons & Dragons? And I had proposed that Dungeons & Dragons should really consider putting product placement into its products, and one of the reasons why is generally actually at the macro level, the tabletop role-playing game business model is an absolutely horrendous business model, and product placement would allow tabletop role-playing games, including Dungeons & Dragons, to significantly increase their profits, right? And I think, product placement is a huge, huge industry, and really, it affects virtually every single industry that exists. I think, there are very few companies that don't really consider product placement, and the few that are not doing well, right? So product placement is a really big deal, and I've thought for a long time that product placement should be in Dungeons & Dragons. But one of the things that's interesting is we have now transitioned from should product placement be in Dungeons & Dragons to let's talk about the product placement that is in Dungeons & Dragons, because there is a significant amount of it now. All right, so why do I say that? Why have we gone from the if era to the it's here era? Well, the biggest reason right now is the Rick and Morty starter set, all right? So Dungeons & Dragons created the Dungeons & Dragons Rick and Morty starter set in November 2019. It is one of the strangest Dungeons & Dragons products that has ever existed. It is very unusual and very strange, right? It's just odd. It's truly odd. And so the Dungeons & Dragons Rick and Morty starter set is really an odd product, right? It's an odd Dungeons & Dragons entity, right? But it is absolutely product placement, right? So this year has really seen the dawn of Dungeons & Dragons product placement. The first instance was the Stranger Things starter set, the Dungeons & Dragons Stranger Things starter set, and that came out much earlier in 2019. So like in spring 2019. Right, and then in fall of 2019, or I guess winter in 2019, we saw the Rick and Morty starter set, right? So these are two very clear instances of product placement within Dungeons & Dragons, right? So that prompts a whole bunch of questions and talking points. So let's dig into this, right? So let's talk about, product placement in Dungeons & Dragons, right? So one, it's absolutely here. There's no two ways about it. It absolutely is here. It's a thing, right? And it really, and in both circumstances, it is coming from streaming television, right? It's coming from television shows, both instances of product placement. Now, this makes sense because Dungeons & Dragons actually was a television show for a short period in the 80s. Also, Dungeons & Dragons, of course, has a long history of being connected to video games. But this is truly unique and special, right? We really haven't seen product placement directly inside of a Dungeons & Dragons product. So it's really, really unusual from that perspective. So I want to talk about how we got here and what it means, right? So one of the things that I think is a big question around this is who pays who, right? So both with the Stranger Things and with the Rick and Morty starter set, who paid who? Did Netflix pay to have did Netflix and Cartoon Network pay to have these shows made into D&D products? Or did Wizards of the Coast actually pay those shows to theme their D&D products with their show, right? And so and now here's the answer. We don't know, right? We really don't know who paid who. That is not public knowledge. Now, if you know something I don't, please hit me up in the comments below. I'm extremely interested in the answer to this, right? But right now, we don't know, right? But let's talk about why this is happening, right? What does each side gain, right? So you have these media companies, you have Cartoon Network, and you have Netflix, right? And then you have Hasbro, which is the owner of Dungeons & Dragons. And so let's talk about what they're getting from this product placement, right? So first and foremost, what does Dungeons & Dragons get? Well, right out of the gate, they get sales of a starter set, right? So they get an increase in the products that they're creating. So they have these starter sets, right? These starter sets are relatively easy for them to knock out, right? It's from the rules perspective, it's literally just a reprint on the rules and a summarization of the rules, which they already have from the starter set that existed 3-4 years ago, and it's an adventure, right? So the work time for WotC is very low, right? Compared to like a 256-page adventure book, right? It must be much easier. I think it would seem to me it would be easier to create these products, right? Now I could be wrong there, because these products do have like significant separate parts, right? So both sets had beautiful, really cool, especially the Rick and Morty starter set has absolutely gorgeous dice that were very well prepared, right? They really do evoke the theme of the Rick and Morty, specifically the Rick and Morty title, Rick and Morty title logo, right? It's exactly the same color. They did a fantastic job with that. But these products, so essentially when D&D themes these, right, they get a product for a relatively low amount of labor from their people, right? And then in addition to that, they can sell these things at a much higher rate. So honestly, I think Essentials Kit is a great product that's going to sell great, right? But I've owned every single 5th edition starter box, right? And I've bought, I don't need a single one of them, right? But I'm so fascinated by these starter boxes that I buy them as soon as they come out, because they're a boil down there to the essence of Dungeons & Dragons. And I think there's a few people like me who are just going to buy whatever starter set they print. So that's a thing. They get to sell the same product to different people, right? And because it's themed in a different way, right, which is interesting and compelling, right? So for Hasbro, right? And by the way, I'm stopping using Wizards of the Coast, and the reason why is Wizards of the Coast is it's a slapped-on label at this point. It's Hasbro, right? They've started literally labeling the product Hasbro Gaming. The WotC label it's useless, right? It's just Hasbro. And I think at the macro level, we as tabletop role-playing game enthusiasts, as Dungeons & Dragons fans, as Dungeons & Dragons researchers, as Dungeons & Dragons commentators, we really need to start just acknowledging WotC is a sticker, right? Hasbro is the owner, and by the way, looking at this product placement, you can tell that's very true, and it's becoming more true every single day, right? Product placement is coming from Hasbro. It ain't coming from WotC. WotC is a sticker. In many ways, I don't even think it functionally exists anymore. It's just Hasbro, right? Hasbro Gaming, right? So Hasbro Gaming, right? Hasbro, right? They get money, right? They increase their sales for these products, right? Because I do think these themed products allow them to increase the sales of their overall starter sets. I'm not convinced at all that these themed starter sets outsell the Essentials Kit, right? But from the perspective of selling more starter sets, there's no question they absolutely sell more starter sets. So Hasbro gains money, and actually, there's nothing wrong with that, right? I'm not saying that in a bad way, right? I actually want Hasbro to be healthy, right? I want them to be able to pay Kate Welch and Jeremy Crawford and Mike Burrows and all the people who work there, Chris Perkins, a very good wage and give them good benefits, right? And they need profit to do that, right? And so I'm not saying that in any bad way, but the reason why I'm saying it is I think that's primarily what Hasbro gets. They get money, right? Now, isn't it the same for the other way around? Isn't the biggest thing that these media companies getting is money? Heck to the no, right? Money is the least they're getting. The least thing they're getting, right? So Cartoon Network and Netflix, I'll tell you right now, I don't think they give two rat tails for the money they're getting from these starter boxes. I do not think they care in any way for the pittance they get off of these starter boxes, right? Now, just so you're aware, okay, the entire tabletop role-playing game industry is $75 million a year. It's chump change, right? Like, $75 million is probably half of what that nonsense Irishman movie that they just put on, The Irishman by Martin Scorsese, that's probably half the budget that movie cost, right? It was outrageously expensive. So, trust me, Netflix and Cartoon Network don't give two farts for the money they're getting off these starter sets. So what do they gain, right? Well, they gain reputational benefit, right? Specifically, I want to talk specifically about the Rick and Morty starter set, right? Cartoon Network, right? What is Rick and Morty? It's just a sitcom. That's all it is, right? It's just a sitcom, right? And frankly, it's a sitcom that struggles with its reputation, right? All I got to do to tell you that Rick and Morty struggles with its reputation is say Szechuan sauce, and automatically you have in your mind the image of of people standing on McDonald's tables yelling that they want Szechuan sauce because of Rick and Morty, right? So Rick and Morty does not have a great reputation. It's just a sitcom. There's tons of sitcoms, right? And so when you create a Dungeons & Dragons Rick and Morty starter set, you make Rick and Morty incredibly important, right? Because now it is the only sitcom in the history of the universe that has a Dungeons & Dragons starter box, period, right? It is the only situational comedy, right, that has a Dungeons & Dragons starter box. That makes Rick and Morty really, really special. They get hundreds, if not well over 1,000 articles, have easily, well over 1,000 articles have been written on, I would say, yeah. I'm confident. Like, I would absolutely bet there are 1,000 articles written on. Now, those articles might be in YouTube form, they might be in podcast form, they might be in written form, right? But there are lots and lots and lots of media touch points where Rick and Morty is getting coverage because D&D made a Rick and Morty product, right? So, and honestly, here's the thing. It is hard to buy reputational benefit, right? So it is my opinion that Cartoon Network came out vastly better off than Hasbro did, right? Rick and Morty walks away with a really unique special thing. They are now the only sitcom in the world to have a D&D box set created for them. The only one, right? And D&D, this is just another product being attached to their amazingly awesome brand that has far better goodwill and far better, reputation than Rick and Morty, right? D&D is an amazing brand. Educators love it. Moms and pops love it now, right? Hip, or actually nerd kids probably like it. Maybe there's a few cool kids who like it, but even nerd doesn't even mean what it meant before, right? Nerd and geek don't have that connotation that it had when D&D was first coming up, right? So Dungeons & Dragons has a fantastic reputation, right? Rick and Morty does not, right? And when you rub these two products together, I will tell you right now, I'm very convinced that Cartoon Network is getting a lot more than Hasbro is getting. In fact, I actually think, unfortunately, who on earth wanted to bolt drunken nihilism, the main theme of Rick and Morty, to Dungeons & Dragons? Did anyone ask for that? I don't think so, right? I really, this is an incredibly strange product. It is really, really a strange product. But at this point, right, it kind of aggravates me that I really don't like that Rick and Morty got pushed to the front of the row, right? In that, if you're going to do product placement with Dungeons & Dragons, there's about 1 million other subjects, companies, individuals, things like that I would much rather see attached to Dungeons & Dragons than Rick and Morty. I really have no idea how Rick and Morty got pushed to the front of the line like this, And the reality is, most likely, it was just Patrick Rothfuss and Jim Zub creating this really cool graphic novel. But it's really wild to me that would prompt the creation of this incredibly unique product and advanced product placement in Dungeons & Dragons, when there's so many other things that you could attach to Dungeons & Dragons that are far more deserving than Rick and Morty, right? So it does aggravate me that Rick and Morty got pushed to the front of the line. However, I am actually very, very happy that product placement is beginning to show up in Dungeons & Dragons. I think this is a fantastic thing. And there is one benefit from the Rick and Morty starter box happening. The Rick and Morty starter box. Okay, so Rick and Morty is drunken nihilism. That's its main theme, okay? it is so antithesis to what Dungeons and Dragons is really all about, right? Which is heroism, right? And imagination, right? That at this point, the one good thing that we do get from the Rick and Morty starter set is there's really no limits to what you can attach to Dungeons and Dragons now. Because I think we didn't start, first of all, the Stranger Things box is amazing. That was very organic. That was a great product placement, right? Rick and Morty, so we started with the best, right? And we followed it with the worst, right? Which means at this point, the product placement that you can attach to Dungeons & Dragons is limitless, right? Reese's Cups, Dungeons & Dragons Reese's Cup starter set, right? Dungeons & Dragons Nike colorway, right? Dungeons & Dragons Adidas starter set. Dungeons & Dragons, you name it, right? Like, there's so many products, right? There's just a million different things that you could connect it to. And frankly, almost none of them are worse or less fitting than Rick and Morty, right? So that's one good thing, is it establishes an incredibly wide range of things that you can now do product placement in Dungeons & Dragons. And I'll tell you right now, I want to see product placement in the direct PHB, DMG in 6th edition, right? And by the way, yeah, you know what? I'll save that for another video. There's a whole, I don't want to, I'm actually coming near the end of my video here, so I want to get off subject. Product placement is very alive in Dungeons and Dragons, and Rick and Morty is one of them, is the nitrous that is really boosting product placement within Dungeons and Dragons forward. All that's my opinion. I'd love to hear your opinion. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.